SEO. Still, I still get people to do that because they feel like it's an add-in. But what I try to do is, and that's not everybody does it, but some people do that. But what I try to do is to sit down with them and explain where within the element that there may be a change that's going on. A lot of optimization is trying to implement within that HTML structure, within HTML elements. Basically, just think of it as a framework for your website or your app, or that kind of thing, basically. The W3 schools would show you a lot. I'm just trying to think of anything else that would be helpful.
There are like hundreds out there.
Yeah.
You show like digital marketing resources, you'll have really good stuff on the first page.
It's fun. I never thought of looking, when I was looking for like meetup stuff, I never thought of looking for digital marketing. I always looked for Google Analytics, but I didn't think it was a part of digital marketing.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
And so I started to stumble on, Google Analytics and digital marketing. I'm like, oh, that's what I need to focus on.
Yeah. And look, and if you're trying to get some nuance to it, look at some things like for e-commerce, for example. Just because you get, there's quite a few clients I get from time to time that are, people are retailers that get you online now. But a lot of times when you talk about analytics and adding tags and setting up filters and so forth, there's a little bit more elaborate with e-commerce and probably some with a very basic site. So that's also another great, topic you can do some search on and get some nuance on there as well. I'm trying to think what else. I mentioned SEO.
In Yahoo product, they have an ad platform.
Yeah, who does?
In Gemini
Oh, Gemini.
or something of that sort.
Yeah.
I've heard my team complain about it. I don't know what you guys think about it.
I've not had any real experience with it, to be honest with you. I've heard vaguely about it. And
Yes, but that's
it's like,
it's not that.
yeah. You'll find the reason why you hear Google is because Google is just so dominant in general. Barely hear about Bing. You hear about Bing as a default more than anything. Hopefully by those from Microsoft. Okay. Don't let that deter you in terms of information. It's a lot of that is more by Google has just gotten so much traction, I think, over the years. And I think I remember a study that said that even for B2B, I think it was way higher than B2C at one point. But Google's just gotten so much traction over the years, and it's kind of become the default of things. But I think maybe the sites would be helpful. You touch a good point. There are sites like Lynda are pretty good if you're trying to find things like, I'm trying to think how to distinguish this a little bit. Not so much for SEO, maybe for, I think they do have a Google Analytics, not 100%, but I'm pretty sure they probably do. But Lynda is good. There's another site called Udemy. That one is it's pretty interesting. This is a lot of independent consultants. They'll put courses on there as well. Those are great, but usually once you start getting into the courses, you're now kind of touching on what Joe was saying earlier. It's starting to progress a little bit more into developer territory, and we're not trying to shy you away from that necessarily. It's just that for analytics, for example, if you're just into reporting, you may have one or two dealings with regular expressions. How many of you have heard of regular expressions before? Okay. So, for those of you who don't know, regular expressions is a syntax for filtering out data. Think of it as kind of almost like a stringer in some ways. It's a syntax that was built up from the language of JavaScript. So that might be helpful to you, but you wouldn't necessarily need to go on and start understanding exactly what a function or method is unless you really are developing the site. It kind of takes, when you start looking at things like Lynda, Udemy, the best advice I can give you is, keep in mind that you are think in terms of tools. What is it you think you want to use? Something even as simple as a URL number. I've seen years ago, I know an agency that took something as simple as an Excel sheet and with concatenation would put a URL, the labels together, and they would build their tags that way. That would be a very simple exercise to do. So I would say if you're looking at something in terms of a course, look in terms of what tools are being used and depending on what your situation is, whether you're working someplace or if you're working independently, go back and ask yourself how frequently those tools are being used. Because the reason being is that you can spend a lot of time on something that you may not end up using at all. So you want to try, I think the best way of learning is trying to tie back to what you're using, so that way it's more natural and you get to apply those concepts.
One other thing I just wanted to reiterate is to really, I want to harp on this a little bit just because it's really important, is to really understand Google. Just because, like Pierre said, everyone uses it. No one really uses Yahoo, no one really uses Bing. The world uses Google. And so if you are a digital marketer, you'll have to, at one point or other, work with Google in some form. So understand the technology updates that they're doing. They have a blog, they have resources. Understand the ins and outs of Google and how that search engine works. And then also, there are, like I said, there are like millions of resources online for digital marketers. So if you ever don't know how to do anything, go back to Google and Google it. Google like millions of things and figure things out, because digital marketers love the internet and they love writing about how to market on the internet. They love how to scheme on the internet and do all these kind of tricks and tips. So if you don't know how to do something, your first thing should be Google it, and then it should be send out a tweet, because digital marketers love to tweet, they love to answer questions, they love to engage on social media platforms. And then after that, I'd say, okay, you can email me or Pierre or one of your friends. If you don't do those two things before you talk to me, I always get upset, because the answer is probably out there. You just have to put in the effort to kind of find it and educate yourself. So I would highly suggest do that.
Great. So I'm kind of take on this last little portion before we jump into a more formal Q&A, is to talk about how to break into digital marketing. Everybody in here kind of has a really strong interest in it, so when moving forward, if you're new to the industry. So I guess, what kind of hard and soft skills do you look for, if you were to hire somebody, or if they're trying to break in and, they're doing a huge change, what specifically do you look for?
That's a good question. Hard and soft skills. I'm going to do the soft first and get to the hard. I touched upon a little bit of, paying attention to people, paying attention to how people behave. That doesn't mean you have to be worldly smart and know exactly what's going on. If you don't quite know what ISIS is, okay, that's fine, but maybe not in some circles, but I would still say you need to have some sense of, of following. If you can't follow, the thing that I did is I always followed automobiles. My reason I became an engineer was for a love of cars. I used to make model cars out of cardboard for 7 years. My whole dream was to engineer automobiles when I was a kid, and got to Ford, and I loved it for 8 years. I also decided I wanted to do something new. And what was interesting when I went off to do grad school was that I had professors, particularly the marketing professors, they loved the fact that I was in the auto industry, and I couldn't quite understand what was going on. Until one of them sat down and just told me, I said, it's just the idea that, the car industry is, you guys are the first, you can sit and think about it, you're the first ones to think about trends and how people behave. For a car, no one has ever, you will never find, I'm going to be the first to say this, you will never find anyone who will come out and say, I was the cup holder engineer. You will never find that. If you really think about it, having a cup holder in a car is kind of a strange thing. I mean, we're supposed to eat at a table. We go out to eat. If you're in New York, I just spent some years in New York, you go out. You don't go to your Nissan, sit in the front seat, the car radio and say, okay, yeah, let's eat. But this is where, and nowadays, this is also your cars now where you take pictures. So that's the other thing. But there were little things that came into play for having a cup holder. The fact that we're spending time in our automobiles more frequently. There's more traffic jams, more people on the roads. We're spending more time. Our commutes are longer. People were going out into the suburbs for years and years and years. It's I think that's changing now. Thanks to millennials thinking that, hey, we gotta bring it back in. That's good. But it's the idea that we're spending so much time in automobiles. Fast food became much more convenient. All these things converge, and I don't want to sound like the cup holder is like the greatest thing on earth, but voila, someone came up and said, how can we make it more convenient when we're on the go? How can we, I need to store stuff. I literally, while I was at Ford, I will never forget this. We had a customer, it was a customer clinic, and the customer wanted to have more rear seat room in the Ranger. This is when we were thinking about extending the extended cab. And the answer we got back is like, well, why would you want this, man? It's like, well, my kids are talking back. I want to have more room to smack them upside the head. So, so you had all these, people have very different reasons, but the thing is, you get, by paying attention to it, that's an important soft skill. It means that you are paying attention to ideas of where people can consume media, or where people might want to use a smartphone. I mentioned about Meerkat before. The idea, someone thought, well, who would want to stream their lives all day long? Well, Madonna tried to premiere a song. I can't remember which song it was, but she tried to premiere a song through Meerkat, actually. And then I think it was Katy Perry that also, I think, came out about a month earlier and said, hey, I think this is great, streaming is the way of the future. So you get people who are, paying attention to how people are using things, using apps, helps you as a marketer understand what's on people's brains all the time. Another savvy tip, I would say, pay attention to who's being bought. LinkedIn, I think, just announced they bought Linda.
Yeah, they bought
Linda. So, that type of purchase is telling you, when someone, bring the financial into it a little bit, when someone is making a large purchase like that, they're seeing a trend going on. That's a big deal. Paying attention to that helps me. That's a soft skill I would look for. Is how well are you paying attention? Again, I'm not saying you got to read the Wall Street Journal, but definitely what is it you're paying attention to, why you're paying attention to it, and which leads to the next soft skill, explaining. Joe mentioned about his day. The idea of trying to go through the data and trying to explain to his employer, here's the trend, here's what's going on. As a marketer, it's becoming much more important to explain what's going on, not so much in this, things went up, things went down. This changed, that changed. It's more about trying to give a coherent story as best as possible about what's going on. That's becoming important, if it hasn't already become important. So those are soft skills. Real quick, hard. Mention about JavaScript. I'm not saying no, just kidding. I would say there's a lot for analytics. Statistics is becoming a big deal, but it depends upon what you're doing analytically. It depends on the amount of data that you're playing with. It depends on if you're trying to do predictive analytics. The more advanced analytics protocols are out there, that means that the more math skills are going to become important. Statistics are going to become important. And this is somewhat soft, but how you're interpreting that data becomes important as well too. Technical, and I think Joe talked about this a little bit before. Being familiar with web structure. Again, I wouldn't commit things to memory, but I would have an appreciation for the fact that if you came to me and said, I appreciate HTML for giving me a very basic structure on certain content elements, where with JavaScript is supposed to be allowing certain functions to happen in the browser without having to call something from the server, my thing would be like, you got some real good understanding there. That becomes somewhat important in terms of who you deal with, how you can deal with things, and kind of understanding what your capabilities are a little bit. It's going to be a challenge. It's a fire hose, but I think that thinking about where you want to go, what you want to engage with the most, will help you decide which pieces you think you need to learn, and which pieces that you probably could take a step back from.
A lot of good stuff there. So I'll quickly go through the hard and soft skills, but I want to talk a little bit about how you can kind of go from like 0 to 100, kind of really start your digital marketing career if that's something you want to do. We're up here and you like nothing what you hear, then that's fine. You're not doing it. But yeah, soft skills, just having a general understanding of technology and eagerness to learn what's happening in kind of the technology sphere. A great example of LinkedIn buying Linda, or reading a TechCrunch article or understanding that Google is going to change their mobile algorithm. I mean, if you kind of talk to me about those points in just a conversation or in an interview, I'm going to know that you actually care about this stuff, you like this stuff, you're interested in it. You can kind of talk the talk. More hard skills, I would expect someone who applies for any type of digital marketing role to have an understanding of basic analytics and some tools and Google Analytics and be able to understand acquiring a customer and how much that costs and cost per acquisition and lifetime value and be very analytic and analytic driven, because at the end of the day digital marketing is all about analytics and understanding what the data is telling you. So if you looked at yourself as more of a designer and a creative person and didn't really talk to me about the hard analytics and stuff like that, I'd be a little kind of taken back and not really understanding why you wanted to become a digital marketer in the first place. But if you were to talk about an SEO strategy or a content marketing strategy or an email marketing strategy on a very basic level to post some flags and make me understand that what you're talking about as a digital marketer, those are kind of important talking points that you would need to communicate to somebody in that field. If you wanted to get started today as a digital marketer, it's never really been easier because the internet is an amazing tool that we all already interact with on a daily basis. But I would tell you to kind of take it to the next level and start just a simple blog. And if you want to take it even a step further, buy a domain and set up a WordPress. WordPress is a very simple tool, a very simple framework that you can create and customize a website with little to no coding experience. I've built dozens of websites on WordPress. I'm not a developer, but just interacting with WordPress and producing content and understanding URL structure and H1 and H2 and keywords. All these things you have to understand when you're writing content or building a website. You're going to learn these things throughout that process. And as you start putting more time into a blog or a website, you're obviously going to want to see more traffic and more people coming to it, so you can start asking your questions. Okay, 1,000 people visited my site last month. How do I get 2,000 or 5,000 next month? And you're going to be interested in finding all these tricks, and maybe I should do more social media. Maybe I should start an email subscription so I can send content right to their inbox. And next thing you know, after 3 months, you have a business. You might not be selling any products, but you are building a following. You are developing content. You are engaging with an audience. That's essentially a business without any revenue. And after that, if you built up an audience and have a few thousand people a month, goes into a dozen, goes into 100,000 people, and you find a way to monetize that, then you're a business owner right there. And it's all because you built some dinky blog writing about whatever it is you want to write about. I'm sure there are a lot of people on the internet who have an interest in those same things. And so I would really encourage you guys to start becoming a blogger. And I wouldn't do like a Tumblr or like a blogger. I would really try to push yourself and go to GoDaddy or Bluehost or a domain purchaser and buy a domain and learn how to set up a WordPress. All these, like a GoDaddy and Bluehost, they all have customer service people who are chopping at the bit to help you start an online business because that's more money for them. So really challenge yourself and go home tonight and think about stuff that you like that you could become a thought leader in and start writing about that and producing content and producing an online platform you can start marketing for. And there's no better feeling in the world, I'm sure you know this because you're your own business owner, is to be your own boss and to call the shots and be founder of producta.com. We all have the capabilities and the power to do that.